Hello, and welcome to another exciting episode of The Retired Astronaut. Today, we're going to be talking about star stories and archetypes, the subject of which came up due to a previous episode. I received, this is from my dad. Thank you, Dad, for watching my videos. And my dad reached out and he's like, I'm fascinated with this concept of archetypes. How would I go about doing that? And he and I had a conversation, and he had mentioned the work of Carolyn Meese. And if you have not explored the work of Carolyn Meese, she has some wonderful things, books, and she's been teaching for many, many years. Her last name is spelled M-Y-S-S, so if you're going to look up Carolyn Meese. She has a whole book on archetypes and exploring of archetypes. And after my father raised this question, I went ahead and checked out what she had online. And I was reading through it, and I love her work. And at the same time, I realized I read the book many years ago, and I think I tried to do the process that she was explaining, and it wasn't. I'm looking for a better fit, I should say. So in looking for a better fit, something that was more individualized maybe, or something that had just a different resonance, I came across very recently, and I've just been exploring it, and that's what I'm sharing today, is this concept of star stories. And it's nothing new. It's actually been around for a very long time. And I was visiting this astrology site where astro.com, so astro.com. And every now and then when I'll go look at my horoscope or look at some of the charts or different offerings. And they're awesome because they will, from time to time, introduce different concepts adjacent to astrology. For instance, they have one where you just pick colors. And it'll give you a really, like colors that you like and colors that you don't like. And you go through you pick about 10 of each. And at the end, it generates a report, and it tells you a lot about your current emotional state and maybe, a mindset that you're working from. It's fascinating. It's actually really fascinating. So I have gone to this site, and I've purchased some other charts before. And for those of you who don't know much about astrology, there are many ways to approach it, and there are different schools and disciplines. However, very often you will find astrologers working with two sets of charts. One is your natal, which is the what was going on in the heavens, when you were born. So if you want to think about it, like that's the hand that you're dealt at birth. And the other chart that's often referred to, and this is when you read your horoscope, like in the paper, or online or whatever, and they're talking about this month for Virgo. They're looking at transits, so they're really looking at how the stars are moving and interacting and the relationship between them. It's different than the natal chart, although when you are getting a complete reading, they'll use both these charts. So it's the hand that you're dealt, and now it's the card game in action, and so if you're tuned in and you're aware and you're following, you can actually, for me, I found, time. It's really good for timing, I think, timing for projects and timing for, when to push and when to hold back and, maybe or when to backtrack and edit. Like Mercury retrograde, everyone always goes off about it. Case in point, screw that. There's no reason to be afraid of Mercury and retrograde. It happens 3 or 4 times a year. It's a very common occurrence. Rather than fight against it and complain about it and blame everything that goes on in those 3 weeks on Mercury retrograde, I like to take that time to edit, writing, video, going through or curating, going through old things, cleaning stuff out. It's a time to when backward looking will actually help you move forward, because once the planet, which in the sky appears stationary, and that's why they say retrograde, because it's a visual illusion, which means your struggles are also a visual illusion. So it's holding its place in the sky, and it actually looks to be traveling backwards. We know the planet's not traveling backwards. It's a visual, illusion based on elliptical curvature. So then after that period, it seems to shoot forward very quickly. Well, all the planets do this. It's not just Mercury that goes in retrograde. Everything goes retrograde. So the way to tap into that power, for instance, like really tap into that power, Mars, for instance, the very, very energetic planet. It's the planet of conflict and warriorship. So, and it goes retrograde about every two and a half years. So when Mars goes retrograde, I think Mars retrograde, and that'll go retrograde for months, usually around three and a half months. Mars retrograde makes Mercury retrograde look like, and you don't hear people complaining about Mars retrograde, do you? No, you don't. However, if you were following your chart, and Astro.com is a great place to do this, and it doesn't cost anything. They give so much for free. They're very, very generous in what they provide. And then they have great charts that you feel inclined to purchase. They also have very personalized charts to purchase. So I think it's a really great resource, and there are a lot of sites that probably provide the service. This is the one that I prefer. So let's take the example of Mars retrograde. Mars retrograde, again, appearing in the sky to be traveling backwards. Now, where that falls in your chart and how, both your natal and your transit chart is a cue or a clue to inform you about an area in your life that's gonna where you're putting energy. You have energy invested, but where it's slowing down, and it's a time to prepare for motion forward. I don't know if you can hear this plane that's flying overhead, just blasting away. As I'm talking about Mars going out of retrograde. So it is very, very powerful when Mars, after months of going retrograde, goes, whoo, just starts moving quickly. Now, if you really want to tap into that energy, and Mars goes retrograde for all of us at the same time, but the area in our chart that it highlights is different based on your natal chart and your transit chart. Now, if you prepare during those 3.5 months for what is to come, and you get ready, or as Abraham Hicks likes to say, get ready to get ready to get ready. Like if you really get ready and you get everything ready to go, and then you're just like, okay, well, I see Mars is going to go, is going to return to forward motion, around this date. That'll give you a clue as to when your project will probably take off and where things will start really moving forward. And if you prepare during those months, rather than go, it's not happening now, but you prepare and you focus on preparation, when it moves forward, things will manifest really, really quickly. So these are things, if you get into astrology, you want to look at astrology, if you want to have another, if anyone's interested in things about astrology, I will share what I know. Most people I know that study astrology, amateur astrologists, whatever, will always caution you. Good ones who are aware, will caution you that I only know this much and I really don't know anything. It's an infinite amount of learning, and that requires respect. And there's no right or wrong way to do it. There are many, many techniques and schools of thought. Now, that's why what made Star Stories, which is a new reading that they're offering on Astro, very appealing to me. And Star Stories is different than astrology, because what the Star Story report will show you are the heavens during, at the time of your birth. You provide your birth information, but it shows you not necessarily the constellations and the transits and what the planets are doing. This is outer space, okay? So these are things not affected by our transits and our solar and lunar eclipses and things like that. These are the stars at the time of your birth that are illuminating across the heavens in the path in the hemispheres of which is in which you're in alignment with. So what's really great is that these stars that get highlighted along the path have these rich, beautiful stories and mythologies from many, many different cultures. And so what the report does is it helps you sync up with those archetypical energies that are uniquely yours. So you can connect these stories that are more personal to your own development and well-being and the timing of your manifestation, your incarnation here on this 3D earthly plane, way more personal, way more direct not subject to transits, meaning you can tap into these energies and tap into these narratives and stories and these archetypes anytime you want. When I ordered and work with them in whatever manner you want, and interpret in how you want. So, case in point, they might in the report reference mythologies from a couple of different cultures, but maybe that's not your culture. Or maybe it's and not even the culture of your ancestors necessarily, anything, recently within, your DNA inheritance. But what you could do then is maybe, like, for instance, 50% of my DNA comes from Ireland. That means 50% of my DNA is infused with all those narratives and stories, because DNA makes RNA. It's a replicate. It's an identical replicant of itself, RNA. And RNA has a narrative structure, is what scientists are finding out. It's a narrative structure. It uses paragraphs. It uses sentences. It has grammar. So these are truly stories embedded in us. And it's a great, wonderful thing to kind of unpack some of these stories and discover or sometimes rediscover. For me, for instance, as I was reading through the report, I was like, oh yeah, I've seen these aspects at work and these symbols at work, and many of them I have a fond, connection to. So I just wanted to give you today a little taste of what's in the report, refer you to the website, and this sounds like something that you'd like to do. You can do that on your own, and I'll also share an insight that came to me, a very important insight that came to me just from reading the report itself, not even from really exploring it in any depth, which is exciting for me to do. So this is like something that I could do for the rest of my life. I mean, these are wonderful stories to explore, and these instances that they mentioned come up for me quite often in my life. So you'll see when you get the report. They have several chapters. It's about, I want to say mine was about 37 pages or so. And it's broken down. There's some that are about life, and there's some that are very, very focused on vocation and very helpful. And they talk about the star itself, the name of the star, and then they talk about the story of the star, how it got its name, and within the constellation, even the placement of where it is. So, case in point, like, one of the stars was in a constellation that creates a lion, but my star at the time of my birth was in the lion's tail, and because it's in the tail, it had a different meaning than, say, if it was on the body or if it was on the head. So there's subtleties within the star groupings of those constellations as well, and I'm going to share today. I'm going to read for you just the introduction, because this will be a much better description of what star stories actually are than from the experts who actually do this for a living. So I wanted to read this introduction to the report so that you would get an idea for the feel. You can go on the site and they'll give you a sample of the report just using your birth data. They won't, they'll kind of give you the intros to these different things so you can get a little taste of it, see if it resonates, see if it's something you want to do, see if it's something you want to invest in. Welcome to the stars. Welcome to the stars. The vault of the heavens is an awe-inspiring lacework of stars. The starry sky, however, is more than just beautiful. It also carries wisdom contained within stories. These stories were placed into the stars over thousands of years ago by our ancestors, who slowly linked their risings and appearances to the human spiritual beliefs and earthly struggles and joys. Amongst the vast array of stars held in the sky, a handful affect you personally. Think of these stories from the stars as the spark, which is you before it engages in the journey of your horoscope. The method used that connects the stars to your horoscope is based on the turning of the Earth, and it's called parens, and it's explained below. By working with the stars in this way, you can uncover your inner spark, your star stuff, baby. You can discover this spark as the essence of you that is beyond the luminaries and planets on the elliptical. So it's, again, beyond your transit and your natal charts, because it comes from the starry vault in the heavens itself. Isn't that beautiful? Isn't that beautiful? I'm getting stories out of the starry vaults in the heavens to share with you today. So, of course, one of the within the report, one of the things that really was of interest to me, that really stood out, that I really wanted to read, was the one on vocation. Right now I'm, just with life. I'm exploring, opening within my vocation, refining, exploring, refining. So, case in point, within the report they mentioned this one constellation. I believe it's going to be Unka, is how that would be pronounced. And Unka is the distinct orange star, and here's how it's described. And it's in the body of the constellation Phoenix. Unka is the distinct orange star deep in the southern hemisphere, located in the body of the Phoenix. Although the Phoenix is a modern constellation, the meaning draws on a much older tradition. Egyptians and Parisian cultures both have myths linked with this star, whose symbolism is of a bird that represents cyclic regeneration. The Egyptian thought of it as the Bennu bird, which appeared to be standing at the receding waters of the Nile, and thus gave the impression of returning from the underworld and bringing new life. In this way, Unka carries a sense of transformation or transcendence, which, when added to your vocation, suggests a vocation involved with the cycle of life and death, destruction and resurrection. And it goes on into more detail. So, while I'm reading this, I'm thinking like, oh wow, yeah, it's very easy for me to look back at my life and draw many connections to not only literally the Phoenix, but also these variations within the different cultural stories. Case in point, the raven, for instance, is yet another Phoenix-type bird within its mythology, having traveled, being pictured as white. It's a white bird traveling to the depths of the sun and bringing that light, that knowledge back to humankind, and in the process being burned, being turned black. Well, that's a bit of an optical illusion. It's blackness, it's darkness. Because actually, if you look at the hues and how the raven is viewed from other birds, it's a rainbow. It actually reflects all of the colors. And it has all of these colors, and yet when it's hit by white light, it reflects back the darkness. So this is an amazing bird. It's a bird of transformation, and it's also a bird that was very integral to my upbringing in Catholicism. So because I was taught by Benedictine monks and the scholastic order of nuns, and the raven was a symbol of a bird that helped Saint Benedict survive out in nature. He was for a while he went monastic before he developed these systems of learning in schools, and really was the founder of and the order founded these systems of education that continue today. Some of which are very effective, I want to say. Like, I can look back at my education and see a lot of effective learning going on, where I was being taught to think for myself and taught to teach myself how to learn. So this, reading through the chart, really great. And I'm identifying as I'm reading. Oh yeah, I'm going through these stories. I'm like, oh yeah, I know that one. I know that one. I know that one. So here's the highlight. Here's what came to me just from reading the report. I finally got down to the last section, and I got. I think it started off, and it started saying something in this aspect that said about athleticism, and it started mentioning that I was an athlete, and started mentioning that I had spending a lot of time watching athletes and training. And for some reason, when I'm reading that, I'm just like, no, I'm an artist. I'm an intellectual. I'm a scholar. I'm rejecting this, and it was weird. It was really very different than everything else I'm reading through the report. I'm like, yeah, and then I get to this part, I'm like, no. I'm like, wow, that's weird. So I'm like, just sort of discounted it. Like, okay, so there's one aspect to this whole chart that doesn't jive. Whatever. Then I got to thinking about it more, and I'm like, what am I? I am an athlete, By the age of 5, I began training as a competitive swimmer. I did for 10 years up and through high school, and then I got into distant running and different things. And for 10 years, 2 hours of practice every day after school, competing almost every weekend. In the summers, 2 practices a day, competing every single weekend. weight training, all of these different things that went in, technique, camps, all this kind of stuff for years and years and years. I'm training. And for me, it just became a way of life. It just became what I did. I mean, everyone in my family were athletes, and my parents are both incredible athletes and coaches. And I had this sense as a child, because everybody in my family is an athlete, and they were making really great accomplishments in sports other than swimming, say like football or different sports. And I started adopting this view of myself from other people, because other people would look at me and they'd say, "You're not really an athlete. You're just a swimmer. That's not athleticism." I don't know. So for a while, I had these contradictory beliefs. I would just be like, whatever. And while I was at school, I would just accept people's belief of me as being a non-athlete, because it was easier than me having to go out there and prove. I was just like, fine, whatever. See what you want. I'm not even gonna care. However, what I'm realizing now by reading this report recently is I had adopted this belief system, and it was something that needed to be lifted off of me, because I am an athlete. And I continue to this day to look at my life, as training, as preparation, very, very much how visualization, goal setting, these types of things that are very much a part of athleticism and training are so much a part of my life that it was hard for me to see it. So if you're interested, check out Star Stories. If you want to explore your archetypes, if you want to explore stories that are really personally meaning for you, this is one report that I'll be able to use for the rest of my life. I'll be able to revisit this whenever I'm seeking clarity on events that are happening in my life, and maybe I want to see what stories are playing out. The nice thing about this report, too, is they share these stories so that when you can sense that you're in the midst of them, or you're recreating them, or you're reenacting them, you can navigate toward the happy ending, toward the pleasing outcome. You can get the most out of the higher vibration aspects of these archetypes. So that's it for today, kids. Until next time, stay peaceful, stay loving, know that you are loved, know that you are divine, live that divine spark that is you. Know that there's a vault in heaven full of stars with your name on it. Namaste, everybody. Namaste.